Hello, everyone. Today, I had the opportunity to sit down and talk with Shelley Linderman, who runs the Wiregrass Angel House. It's a very important ministry here in Dothan, Alabama, that specifically offers help and support to those family members or those people that have been experienced the trauma of having a loved one be the victim of either homicide or completing suicide. And their ministry basically helps mitigate the trauma of this for that family, start to finish, everything from exactly what happens to the what needs to be the cleanup that needs to possibly occur after that tragedy has occurred, all the way through possible trial and beyond, in terms of counseling and support that needs to occur for people who are going through that type of grief and traumatic event of life. Anyway, we had a fascinating conversation, dealt with a number of different topics related to her ministry, and I hope you'll join us on this journey. So the Wiregrass Angel House, and like I said, I saw those crosses in the on your parking lot on Main Street. Could you show me your term? Just kind of give us the
lowdown.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Well, Wiregrass Angel House, we established it in 2004.
Okay.
And it is for homicide families and suicide families that are survivors. And National Day of Remembrance is for homicide is September 25th every year. And so I wanted to not just give the families a day because they've suffered the ultimate sacrifice,
right?
One of their family members being killed. So we started putting up crosses, and we put them up the last day of August. So they are on display for the whole month of September.
Okay.
And each cross represents a family member who we have worked with. So since 2004, we have worked with 459 different families.
Okay.
And so those are the pictures that are displayed out in front of our Angel House for the month of September.
Okay. Now, those who have been victims of homicide, and those who have completed suicide as well, and that's kind of an interesting philosophical distinction, right? That that you probably have had to describe before.
Absolutely.
Either way, it's compassion to the family in a sense.
That's right.
But also want to ask about what's your range of concern? I mean, because is that for those who have been victims in the Southeast Alabama, just the Dothan area? What?
We work 8 counties.
Okay.
We work Coffee and Pike County,
okay,
Dell and Geneva, Henry and Houston, and Bullock and Barber counties.
All right.
And so it's the square of the Wiregrass.
Okay.
And so we provide services to families in those areas. And we have provided services to others outside our area when they've been requested.
Okay.
But we have a very good relationship with the police departments and the sheriff offices. And so what happens is when a suicide or a homicide has happened, they call us, and we provide a very unique service that nobody in the state of Alabama provides, and that is we do cleanup. So most people think that, let's say there was a suicide in the home. The police go and they investigate it actually like a homicide in the beginning until they get the results they need to see that it's a suicide. But either way, homicide or suicide, the mess is left for the families to take care of.
Oh boy, yeah.
And so what normally happens is if they don't know about our services, they have to pay a great deal of money, usually around $2,000 for each crime scene, to have somebody come and professionally clean it up, or they have people who are compassionate and want to help, and those people aren't trained as they should be in removal of that kind of, blood and stuff like that.
Right.
And so we provide that service. We partner real well with a company called BioShield that's here locally in Dothan, and they have a really good response time for us. And we have worked out a really good partnership financially. So they are able to help us and us be able to pay them. And when we run out of funds for those, we have volunteers that have been trained hazmat to go and do those as well.
That's probably a grossly underappreciated ministry.
Yes.
Before I came here, I've been the chaplain for several fire departments going back 17 years back when I lived in Texas, and spent a lot of time with firefighters who were struggling. And they
Yes.
say, Chap, yeah, Jess, that was a pretty gruesome scene.
Yes.
So and so ate his gun, and
Yes.
people. It's just seldom it seems that people complete suicide messy, I mean, in a clean way.
That's correct.
And so I would have someone say, "Listen, I had to go in and I had to assess this, and now I can't unsee that."
Yes.
I can only imagine what that type of trauma would be for family members who find their loved one in after that, or especially if it's a homicide, but also completing suicide is entirely a different thing.
It is.
Because all that's left is embedded in their brain,
That's correct.
along with the guilt maybe that they're experiencing.
Absolutely.
As a chaplain, you're spending a lot of time in guilt management.
Yes, absolutely. It's that way for our counselors as well.
Mhm.
We have trauma counselors that are trained specifically for trauma, and they deal a lot with the survivor's guilt, especially with suicide. The one distinction between the homicide and suicide is that homicide, there's somebody else to blame.
Right.
That person didn't want to leave them, but they left because somebody made the decision to take their life. In suicide, there's only two people to
Right.
blame: yourself or the person who did it. People can't see outside of themselves in the beginning, and so they want to blame themselves.
Right.
And so that's one thing. We do suicide aftercare, and our counselors work greatly with those families. But we provide the cleanup because you're exactly right. Once they see the trauma of the aftermath of finding their loved one, their brain kind of shuts down. And so if they don't have to go back in to clean that scene, and we can provide that for them, and they don't have to worry about paying us for it, and not just the payment as much as it is the availability. And so I think that's one thing that we offer that people don't realize, because you might not ever know anybody's family member that was killed or was murdered, but everybody knows somebody in church, a cousin, a nephew, niece, whatever, that have killed themselves. And so I like to get the word out that we offer that service, and all they have to do is call us.
It's very rare that it's very rare that you interact with someone who's not been touched by this at all.
Absolutely.
Especially because, well, you think about just the statistics we have about veterans, right? I remember years ago hearing the 22 a day a statistic. I don't know if that still is maintained, still stayed the same. But I do know that in many cases, sociologists are describing many of deaths of despair now. That we are experiencing something of a cultural malaise where suicide rates are higher than they've ever been.
Yes.
And as a result, ministries like that are extremely important because, not just the counseling, like I said, but counseling, cleanup, everything that are related to that, because you're trying to mitigate the trauma.
Yes.
That's something that's already horrific.
It is.
So, so the Wiregrass, basically those 8 counties, right?
Yes.
Here in Southeast Alabama. And what inspired? Are you the founder of this?
Well, I'm sort of. So I started working with families in 1998 at a local organization in Montgomery called Vocal, and they're a statewide organization that does advocacy for violent crime, all violent crime.
Okay.
And then the district attorney at that time in Houston County said, I really think I want to open a place in Dothan. His name was Doug Valeska. And Doug had a real heart for families and for victims. And so he said, I will put the seed money in and help it get started. And would you like to, be the director? And I said, absolutely. And so, because I'm from this area, I lived here since I was, 4 years old. And so it's my heart. And so we opened it at we used to have an old jail downtown. that they literally tore down for a parking lot. And we stayed there for a few years. And then the Flowers family from Flowers Hospital donated where we are today. And we had a couple of big fundraisers, and we renovated the home that Dr. Paul Flowers was in his original beginnings. It was his very first office was there. And so the Flowers family were just gracious enough to donate it all to us, and we fixed it up. And like I said, we've been there since 2007.
Okay.
So, so I'm going to say yes and no. I mean, it was Doug's idea. Without him sponsoring us, we could have never got off the ground. And so now we are sponsored by people donating, and we have a few grants that we work off of.
Okay.
And so we're very, very proud of how far we've come.
Now, biographically, was there any specific events that inspired this movement for you? I mean,
well, at that time in 2004, we had a lot of homicides down here in this area.
Just a different period.
Yeah. And we couldn't, like in Dothan at that time, I think we had like 12 or 15, which is a lot for us here. But it wasn't just here. It was in Coffee County. It was in Pike County. And so, and Vocal would go to like parole hearings and such, but they didn't give them the one-on-one care because there's simply not enough people to work the organization. And so he wanted those people to have more specialized care and have a trauma counselor. And we have a court advocate who's an attorney on staff that goes to court with them. And so it has grown a great deal from, I call it the one-man band, which was me in the beginning. And so, but we've able to grow. We have 6 staff members now that are able to work with these families.
Okay. And now, are there, this is distinct to here. Is there like a national network or association? Is just a local concern, local inspiration?
Yes.
So I was surprised a little bit about this just because when I first moved to Dothan last February, first thing that struck me is that it just seemed to be just a crime-free space. I grew up in a town way up in Northern California.
Yeah.
Which is, if you get far enough north in California, it's almost like a West Coast annex of the South in a sense.
It is, yes.
And so we just do not know what the rest of California is like. This is a totally different world. You guys do what you want. But way up there, and it was my hometown. I come from Redding, California, way up near the mountains. And they oftentimes say you can't go home because you've changed since you were last there, and it changed. I come to Dothan, it just feels like the Redding of my youth.
Yes.
It felt like the town I was growing up in, where it just seemed like there wasn't a lot of crime. There wasn't, you didn't have this big thing, awareness about local homicides, just because there was some crime that just was a peaceful place to be. Rode my bike everywhere at night. My mother told me come in at dark. But then I see all those crosses out in that you had out in the parking lot, and it made me wonder, what are the crime statistics in this area? Has it changed over time? Is it in a better place now, or is it experiencing kind of a rough time?
I would say that it's less than it was when we first started in this concentrated area. We have our sheriff's office and our police department for Dothan are very keen on knowing where the problem spots are, and they really work those areas. Unfortunately, one homicide's too many, and we still have some, but I think it is less in the Dothan area. But where we've really spiked is in Pike County,
really,
and in Barber County, and in Eufaula. Both of those areas have really spiked with homicides. A lot of violence in both of those areas, and so so most of our attention is going that way. But we're still, of course, Dothan is our home and it's our hub, and that's our first calling. And then, but like I said, we have 6 staff members that are able to reach out and help the ones that need help.
Okay.
So
now, in terms of, philosophically, we want to talk about the difference between, what you said, homicides and suicides, and how have you navigated that? Just because, like you said, if there's a homicide, there's a person to blame.
Yes.
If there's a suicide,
There's nobody to blame in the beginning. And most what I have found with survivors and suicide aftercare, it's they either blame
Right.
the victim, and they are still a victim. And I say that they're a victim in the sense that I had a sheriff a long time ago tell me suicide is a self-inflicted homicide.
Right. Right.
And I think because people who commit suicide are in a very dark hole
Right.
that they can't see out of, that, the family members don't understand that no matter what they do, or if people are going to commit suicide, they're going to do it.
Right.
And we give them the tools. We work with them the best we can.
Right.
We try to, explain to them. Inspector Care is really good about that as well. They really try to help bring awareness to suicide prevention. And, but what I've learned is if people are going to do it, they're going to do it no matter,
Right.
you can watch them 24/7, it wouldn't matter.
Exactly.
And so, we teach the family members that you cannot blame anybody. It is just what it is. And that person who did it they're just in a very dark place and they can't seem to, if they, what we tell them is look up, they're in that hole, just look up. But they get into that cyclical cycle of, I've got so much on, especially we have had so many suicide for teenagers. Now that to me has probably grown exponentially in the last 4 years because bullying, especially cyberbullying, social media.
They experience at school follows them home by
Absolutely.
social media. It never turns off.
That's correct.
Social media has, I think, our suicides. There's a lot of pathologies across our culture that correlate strongly with the advent of social media.
Yes.
Whether it be body dysmorphia, whether it be different aspects, mental health issues. There's a lot of things that correlate with that because all those things, all those teenage angst and just the developmental depravity that we experience in high school, those things can sometimes, once upon a time, be left at school.
Right.
And they just weren't ubiquitous. They weren't 24/7.
Yes.
And now they are. And oh gosh, now I'm trying to wean all our kids off of their social media. You might sooner hold back the tide. I don't know.
Exactly right. Now, what I have found that I thank God that we didn't have social media when I was growing up.
Oh gosh. Oh, I'm so happy that the internet didn't exist when
exactly.
Because not only did I benefit from not having the internet as a kind of a impinging force, but also all of my mistakes are pre-internet.
Yes, and pre-cell phone picture-wise and such as that.
Yeah. So no, I'm happy about that. The reason why I asked about suicide is really interesting because years ago I was in the fire chaplain training course, and the instructor used interesting terminology that caught my ear. He said, he was talking about one firefighter or one person, first responder, who had gone through some sort of trauma and didn't tell anybody about it, stewed in him. It was basically became an encroachment of the soul over time. Mm-hmm. And eventually he wound up completing suicide.
Yeah.
And that's just a small little, lexical tick that I caught on because we oftentimes always say commit suicide.
Instead of complete it.
Complete suicide. He completed suicide. And I remember asking him, I said, I hope this doesn't seem petty, but I have to ask you why the use of that specific terminology. And he said, well, the families are experiencing trauma enough that you try to take out some of the language of perpetrator there. Because you don't know to what extent you don't know what's going through their mind. They can't tell you anymore.
That's right.
And so you don't know to what extent they succumb to a wave of despair that would be overwhelming for most of us.
Yeah.
You don't know what was going on there. And so as a result, as a compassion to the family, you're trying to kind of remove some of the blame in your terminology.
Yes. That's a really good way to put it. Just like my sheriff who said it's a self-inflicted homicide. It's not. It's something that they did, but they were not in their right mind to do. Because if they were in their right mind and they could see past the darkness, then they would never do it. Especially kids.
Right.
Kids have no, and we've had so many. We've had 3 in Pike County in the last 7 months.
Really.
Teenagers, yes.
Mm. I remember it was my own teenagers were young when there was a television program that they were all talking about, 13 Reasons Why. And it was a television program that had been, in the course of the series, it was someone who completed suicide and they were blaming everybody else, and they had left video evidence of why they were blaming everybody else. And it wound up being, some people thought that it was possibly a good catalyst to conversation, to talk with your teenage kids about about suicide if they had been affected by it. I felt it was very destructive, because what it was doing was it was then telling people, it was telling the potentially suicidal, you know what, as a revenge video to everybody else,
Oh, yeah.
here's your opportunity to finally get back at all them. And I saw it as highly destructive because, those that you complete suicide for are, one, never going to learn their lesson. If they didn't really care about you when you were alive, you're not going to activate their conscience
That's
with
right.
your death. Okay. And 2, those who should not be blamed will feel it.
That's right.
So everybody you want to teach this lesson won't learn it, and everybody you don't want to feel guilty about it will.
Yeah.
And so there's just no positive outcome. And
wow,
so
that's all. Yeah, that's a lot of food for thought.
So I've just always tried to kind of interact with people and try to say, acknowledge all the ugly that they're experiencing,
yes,
but still try to point out beauty.
Yes,
Let beauty have its say.
Yes.
I mean, I was on the University of Central Florida when people used to ask me, why hasn't education rid you of your faith yet? And they genuinely thought this. I mean, universities are largely Marxist indoctrination camps, and so I was there working on a doctorate in archaeology. It's just a fish out of water, but nevertheless, I would get these type of questions: why hasn't education rid you of your religion? Why do you still hold to those things? And the question always comes up: why does how can you believe in a God that would allow all this ugliness in the world?
Yes.
And he would talk about suicide, and despair, and natural disasters, and all the cruelty that man happens to other people, and homicides and so forth. How can you believe in a God that allows so much ugly in the world? And my response always was possibly not satisfying to them, but it was satisfying to me, and that is to say, you are absolutely right. There is that much ugliness in the world. In fact, everywhere you look, you can find it.
Yeah.
I can't explain the existence of beauty without it.
That's right.
So the burden of proof lies with those who want to explain why beauty exists at all. Why do we even perceive it at all without God in our life? And so oftentimes, if someone's determined to go down that road, you can't necessarily pull them out. I don't know what level of intervention is somehow going to be lastingly effective.
I don't think it is. And our head counselor, Dr. Bo Grice is his name, and he's had many years. He's got more paper on the wall than, I mean, he has had several. He's got a doctorate degree, master's, double master's, and right. He's been doing this a long time. And he says the same thing. You cannot, when somebody decides to do it, you can't pull them back from it.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of like the age-old question.
Right.
If you could answer that, then, we would solve the world's problem.
There's your magic pill right there.
Yeah.
But the one thing I do try to do is I say, okay, if all is despair, explain to me X, and try to get the smallest little beauty that I can help them identify.
Yeah.
And say, is everyone against you? What about that person?
Mm-hmm.
Is all, negative is all lost? What about that? And, who knows? Maybe whether or not you can help them kind of latch onto a little bit of beauty and say, that's kind of like it. You don't discount the possibility that God is scratching in the back of your brain, like with this little type of annoying tick reminding you that he's there.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it's a very tough issue.
It is, and it's that way with homicide as well. Excuse me, homicide and suicide. That one question we always get is why. Why?
Right.
And because the number one question they want to ask the offender is, "Why did you do it?" And I like, and this is what I try to explain to them is, first of all, their explanation will not be good enough to get the understanding you need of why your loved one's not here.
No, it won't.
And same way with a suicide. I had a good friend, went to our church for many years, and his 18-year-old son committed suicide. And he just dealt with it in such a beautiful way. And the fact that he just said, Lord, if you just, let me know why. And what came to him was, son, if you knew why, you still wouldn't understand.
Right.
And so I kind of just think it's on a level we can't ever understand on this earth. So, but they blame themselves, homicide or suicide. Even homicide, family members will blame themselves, fathers with children, when children are killed. Why didn't I know? Why didn't I have a sixth sense? In one case, it comes back to me from many years ago. The father was in another town. The daughter was at college. And she was taken from a grocery store and was brutalized and murdered. And he kept saying, why didn't I know? What's wrong with me as a dad that I was shopping for Christmas and had no clue? And
it just hits on your most primal and fundamental identity as a protector.
It does, especially for fathers with children. That's probably the biggest survivor's guilt that they have, is that, why didn't I know? And like I said, it happened because most people don't have that little sense that something's going on. And
no, we didn't. We want to have that spidey sense that just like, oh, okay, I know something's a little off. But typically, that's a scene from a movie.
It is.
For the rest of us, we're focused on what we're doing, and then all of a sudden, now you panic because you didn't see that coming, and some predator who was more clever than you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's one of the big things. One of the problems we face is that we, for whatever reason, God allows people in the world who are themselves very predatory, and they know where the honey's good, and they know what they can take.
Yes.
I mean, I oftentimes tell people that all sins are sinful, but not all sins are equally relatable.
That is a very good way to put it. Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
So I just can't get why it is someone goes into a target-rich environment and decides they're going to snatch a child.
Yeah.
Or whatever reason they did. And it sounds horrible, but some homicides are understandable because two people got in a fight.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Or so there was some disagreement, or it escalated, and someone's rage got out of control. Or you can sometimes you can even understand gang disputes, and sometimes you can understand robberies, and you can understand this person that was after XYZ resource and didn't care who they hurt in the process.
Yes.
You can almost wrap your mind around that. But then others, you just go, what? No.
Senseless, yeah. We actually had one in June this year like that. A neighbor, two neighbors, one of the neighbors had a friend over visiting. And for some reason, they still don't know why, that friend went next door and shot this lady in front of her child in middle of broad daylight. There was no precipice to it. There was nothing leading up to it. And he still wouldn't give a reason. And so you cannot wrap your mind around, why would you, now you've left 3 children or, without their mother.
Right.
And there was no argument beforehand, nothing like that. And so I don't know why bad things happen to good people. That's the number one question we always get. So, but that's why Angel House is there, because people get these kind of questions and they feel this torment. It could be 3 a.m. It could be 9 p.m.
Right.
It's always on holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, their birthdays, the day of the death, anniversary of their death. And that's why we have a 24-hour number so they can call, because, about 6 months after a homicide or suicide, the families, people have moved forward,
Right.
except for the people that it directly affects, immediate family and such. And those people are still in pain and are hurting. And so, but the other people have moved on, and it makes them feel uncomfortable because our nature is to want to fix people and to help them.
Right. Right.
And, I want to find something to help you. And these family members, there's nothing you can do but listen, because you can't fix it unless you can bring them back, and you can't do that.
That is such a good point. Well, I mean, that's one of the tangential lessons from the book of Job.
Yes.
Is that his friends, he's going through all this calamity, and for about a week, his friends have it right. And, for about a week, they just sat with him and just
Yes.
kind of like mourned with him that he goes through all this. About the end of the first week, though, it all starts to fall apart as they start searching around for explanations.
Mhm. That's right.
And so that's kind of, the book of Job is a weird one. I remember really diving into it in seminary going, I don't know about this one, man. Because the whole point of that story is it goes out of its way, the narrative goes out of its way to make it obvious that Job doesn't deserve any of this.
That's right.
And I taught that book later on in another Bible college setting, and I had students even there could not believe that he didn't deserve any of it. I said, walk them through the text. And they said, no, come on. Everyone brings them something on themselves in some way. I'm like, no, let's look through this. It really goes out of its way to show that he doesn't deserve this. This all happens as a result of a divine bet.
Yep.
Where God says to the devil, see that guy over there? I bet you he won't crack no matter what I throw at him. And it's like, and Satan's going, no, he'll crack. It's like, I don't want to be a result of some divine bet.
Exactly right.
But nevertheless, he's going through all this mourning, and his friends show up, and they just sat with him for a while. And then they start looking through explanations, and that spends, the next 30 chapters, just 35 chapters of them groping around in the dark, trying to find some explanation for this. And eventually, Job gets scolded by God for trying to find an explanation for it. And it's a weird book. It's considered the oldest book in the Bible, actually, based upon its internal evidence. But it's one of those things of dealing with grief, dealing with trauma, and how one maintains faith in the absence of any explanations.
Yeah, and he lost everything and everybody.
Right, exactly.
And that's, yeah. And we refer to that a lot, actually, to our families. But, I would say this. Because we're a nonprofit, we speak light into darkness. We try. And we refer to the Bible a lot. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people are very angry at God. Very angry.
Yeah.
And so instead of saying, oh, you can't say things like that, that's God and all, you know what I say? He understands. You're his child.
You think God gets his feelings hurt?
Yeah. or like you're gonna, he's God. He might strike you or whatever. Yeah, we let them feel how they want to feel, and so a lot of times we are very careful about, I know in your line of work you've heard this a lot. Well, God must have needed another angel. Well, if he needed another angel, he could have made one.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like that.
I myself don't like to say those things.
Yeah.
Because, first of all, theology has consequences. It does, right?
Yes.
And angels are the help.
Mm-hmm.
Angels are the ones that are basically sweeping the floors and dusting the house and keeping everything tidy. And they're the butlers and the maids that are basically maintaining the household for the master of the house.
Mm-hmm.
We're the children that get to hang around and play around the Christmas tree. We're the children that get to sit at the table. We're the ones that get to make the mess and don't get fired for it, right?
That's right.
So I don't like that terminal. I get where people are trying to be comforting with those type of things, but sometimes in our attempts to sound comforting, we say things that are just
not right.
Bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I try not to give people easy explanations. What I do is I oftentimes like to talk to them about how, the book of Psalms, this huge prayer / song book in the middle of our Bible.
Yeah.
Dead center. And it's so important that if you ever, anyone who's been in the military got handed a little New Testament from the Gideons as they were going to MEPS. And it has the New Testament and the Psalms in the background. So that's how important that is. Like anyone who gives you a New Testament, it's going to have Psalms in it. Each one of the Psalms is these examples of praying. A lot of the Psalms. Well, basically, the Psalms fall into basically three major categories: asking, thanking, and complaining. In fire service, you say bitching about this or that. No, that's the category. You're like, no, they don't complain. That just sounds irreverent. No. King David, a lot of the Psalms are all about God. What in the world?
Yeah.
What was this all about? Why didn't you help me? Why aren't you helping me? Show up, would you please? There's a lot of that. And it seems like the only irreverent prayer one can say is the one they don't say. Because your strained relationship with God isn't evidence in your angry talk. Your strained relationship with God is evidence in you stop talking.
Yes.
Your relationship is in trouble when they stop talking.
That's right. That is a very good analogy, because that's exactly right. I always tell him that he knows your heart. He already knows your thoughts. You're not fooling him. And so we try not to, like I said, when they want to talk about it, we will, but they will say, I'm mad at him. Don't even pray. Don't even bless this food. And we're like, okay, so we got to meet them where they're at.
I mean, I've not experienced the trauma of homicide or suicide, but I mean, full life, I've had a lot of stuff going on, and I've had those moments in my life when I tell you, I say, God, I really honestly, I'm not your best salesman right now.
Yeah. That's good. I like that.
I'm just not. I mean, it's all right. But then later on, people will ask me because prayer sometimes can get kind of a utilitarian reputation. Like you pray to do this, you pray this to get that. People oftentimes they're touching on that when they use phrases like "there's power in prayer." Like, what do you mean when you say that? I believe that prayer is effective. Effective for what? I mean, I'm sorry, I don't like this I've always kind of bristled at this transactional view of pray to get. The difference between prayer and magic, as an anthropologist, I kind of studied it. The difference between prayer and magic is the degree to which you think you have any control of the outcome.
Wow.
So a lot of people say that they're prayer, but they are really giving incantations that they hope will have they think they have some control of the outcome. No, prayer is communication to a God who has total freedom and is completely sufficient within himself and complete agency and can do what he wants.
That's right.
Sometimes, for reasons which seem good to him, he has granted his creation the dignity of causality. Yeah. So we have inexplicable moments throughout the Bible when God says, okay, I did this because you asked. And I can't wrap my mind around that.
Yeah.
But I do know that he can do what he wants. And the difference between prayer and magic is I have no control over this.
Right.
This is me asking Dad something I would like. And he has complete freedom to say yay or nay. But nevertheless, prayer, I don't like that transactional side of it. But people would ask me in the low parts of life, so why do you pray? I mean, why do you call out to God if you're not necessarily expecting any particular result? And I would have to tell him, I'd say, well, sometimes you're reduced to calling out to God because he's the only one who's really listening.
Wow.
Because I call out to God because, frankly, there's no one else to call out to.
That's true. You get in such a desperate place.
Right. And if anyone who would possibly relate to my trauma or my tragedy, who could relate to me more than one who witnessed his own son's homicide on a cross?
That's right.
I mean, so I don't know that anyone can relate to me more than that.
Right. And we do use that a lot as well.
Right.
We do. And he was, perfect. And
I know, right?
Yeah, he was murdered. So yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, so trauma is something that, we interact with people and try to be compassionate, but we can't wrap our heads around it.
Mm-mm.
I think, and again, back to Job's friends, I think we could even possibly do more harm if we try to offer quick and easy explanations. I mean, as in my time in the fire service, I would have people say, "Chap, you knew exactly what to say." And I'm like, that was very humbling because I said nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like, oh, all those years in seminary, all that training was reduced to sitting there quietly. Yep.
That's exactly right. Holding a Kleenex, holding their hand, and keeping, because I have a saying, and that is when the trauma is the newest, your words should be the fewest.
That's right. Oh, very good.
Because what can you say? Nothing.
You can.
And they need to be able to grieve and in a safe space.
Right.
And they don't really want to hear your opinion, especially at that moment.
Yeah.
They just need to know that they're not alone and that there'll be somebody to walk through this horrible journey with them. Because it is a journey. And I tell people it is a marathon. It is not a sprint. And some days you can only take an hour at a time. And I tell them when you can't even take the hour, go to 15 minutes and just make it through that 15 minutes. But really, it's just letting them know they're not alone and that there's somebody 24 hours a day to walk that road.
Well, and one of the things I've shared with people is that, there's no way to make it better, only ways to make it worse.
Yes.
And, can we avoid any of those? And so, like when I'm interacting with, because oftentimes you're counseling not just the person in the trauma, but those around them.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so you're coaching those, saying, listen, you can't make it better for them, but you can make it worse.
That's right.
And here's a couple of ways. Here's a couple of things you can do to avoid that. You can avoid quick and fast, easy explanations. You can avoid telling them to get over it. You can avoid entertaining any way in which they're to blame. I mean, don't. So there's like the second level counseling that you do to coaching those around that person. But don't exacerbate this, really. And
you're right, because what will happen is they turn to outside family or even family that's not immediate, and it absolutely makes it worse for them because they want a quick fix. We live in a society where everything's instantaneous. And there's no quick fix to either one of these. And with homicide, it's such a long journey because with suicide, we don't have to go to court. We don't have to do crime and punishment, which is a whole nother program that we have at Angel House where we go to court with all homicide families. And, it takes 3 to 5 years for a court case to come up and be settled, to go to a trial. And in between, you have all those hearings that brings them right back to that night.
What's your opinion about the victim impact statement in some sentencing hearings?
I think it's the most healing thing that a family member can do. Yeah. Okay. I've worked with thousands of people in this situation, and I can tell you that I could probably count on one hand how many victim impact statements make a difference to the sentence.
Right.
What happens with a victim impact statement, when a homicide happens, from that day forward, you hear the victim's name one time. And after that, you hear the defendant, the offender, the defendant, the offender. The day that they're sentenced and a victim impact statement is done, that is the time that mother, father, sister, child gets to stand up and say, let me tell you about whoever. Let me tell you about the person you took from me. Let me tell you why we're here. Because what people don't realize, if you look in a courtroom, the only person who did not ask to be there, who did not sign up to be there, was the families of the homicide.
Right.
And so the judge, he ran for it, for goodness sake, and spent a lot of money to get elected. The district attorney, prosecutor, same way. The defense attorney, they get paid. The offender who did it. The family is the only one, even us. I mean, we get paid. The only one that doesn't is the survivor's family. And so they get to stand up and they say, all of you who chose to be in this line of work and you who chose to take my loved one, I'm going to take 5 minutes and tell you how this destroyed my life.
Okay.
Because I think what happens is when they get to speak their truth, it makes them feel heard and validated. It makes them feel that it's not about the sentence. It's about understanding why we're here. Understanding because you made the choice to take this loved one. And so even though the victim impact statement in Alabama, now other states are different, but in Alabama, you don't address the offender, you address the judge.
Okay.
But what they do is they address the judge, but they're talking to the offender.
Right.
And which is fine. But it's really even not about saying, I think that this person who did this is a horrible person. It's more about, let me tell you about my daughter who, just graduated from college, or let me tell you about my son who got a football scholarship, or let me tell you about my mama who just became a grandmother. And because they've been lost in the last 3 to 5 years.
Right.
Because we are taught and we teach them, you keep your mouth shut during all these hearings and trials because we don't want it to come back on appeal and have to redo this again.
Right.
And so they're good little soldiers. They really are. And your heart breaks for them. But they know they get that time at that victim impact statement to speak. And I can tell you this, I have known families that didn't get to do a victim impact statement. And it really left a void in their life, and it took them much longer to get on that path to healing. And so to me, it starts them. I just give you an example. I have a family, their mother was murdered in 2010, and they just arrested the person last year.
Really? Okay.
Yes. And this family, even though they've been through all kinds of things, they have been stuck because they can't begin to heal until even if the bad person is acquitted in any case, once they get through the hurdle of the criminal justice system, they can start the journey to healing. And so
nothing to kind of crack open that pressure relief valve in a sense.
That's correct. And so they're just kind of stuck, and they kind of put it on the back burner, and they grieve and they hurt, but they're just stuck. And that's why, like people who they never get any resolution of who did it, it leaves a hole in their heart. It leaves a hole in their life. I had one that was the mother was murdered 30 years ago, and we just received resolution in it 2 years ago. And the man, he pled guilty. He only got 2 years, but everybody's like, that's awful.
What in the world?
But it gave the family what they needed to begin to heal, because he stood up and he took accountability and said, I did it. And that accountability means more to them than wondering, was it really him?
Yeah.
And so I know I got off the subject,
That's
but
okay.
the victim impact statement, I think it just really is that caveat to help them start that genuine healing process.
Right. It doesn't necessarily add to what that person is sentenced to. It is primarily a ministry to the families.
It is.
Who have now experienced this, and they have no means of being able to crack that open, and so that healing can begin that way.
That's correct.
So, you've walked through a lot of people through a lot of trauma, and you're probably, unfortunately, rather quite privy to all the details of what took place. I mean, you probably even had been on a few cleanup scenes with people yourself. What has been your strategy for kind of navigating that? It's difficult to. Someone years ago, a preacher used a good plain words. He said, he's like, the sole of your shoe picks up things where you walk, and you come home and it's still stuck there. So he's like, our soul picks up stuff when we walk through life, especially with a lot of other people, when we walk through their stuff with them.
Yeah.
What's been your strategy for kind of helping these things not glom onto you at all?
It's funny. A lot of people have asked me that question, and all I can tell you is that God equips the called,
That's true.
and you're going to find this probably unbelievable, but I have an extremely weak stomach. That if I'm watching, say, Chicago Med, I literally will not watch the show because of it. But I have done over 1,000 crime scenes myself. That doesn't bother me. I just think it comes from God,
Right.
and He just shields me from it.
Yeah.
And but I will say this: I probably laugh at inappropriate things. I laugh at inappropriate times, and that's probably my release. And I watch comedies. I watch a lot of comedies, and so I can tell you, watching dramatic shows is a trigger. Unless I've watched, this is so weird, but if I know the ending and it's good, then I can watch the whole thing.
Right.
But if I don't know the ending that's going to be good,
Right.
and the person I like is going to be killed, I don't watch it. So, but I just think it was just a calling. Somebody asked me one time, because when I'm still with the family, I still get emotional and I still cry. And they said, gosh, how can you keep doing that after 28 years? And I said, well, when I quit crying is when I'll quit my job.
You finally got numb to it.
Yes.
You don't want that. I hear that. Again, interacting with the other first responders in other situations, and they say, yeah, the day when this doesn't affect me at all, I'll kind of worry about that.
Yeah.
Because, but in the meantime, those type of ways and kind of cracking open the pressure a little bit, the dark humor,
Yeah.
way in which, like, oh no. I mean, and it's rubbed off on me too. I remember specifically, it was years ago. I was serving at another church under a priest, and he says, "You spend a lot of time with firefighters with you." I said, "At the station, yeah, I do." He goes, "Yeah, we can tell."
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, and police officers. My husband's retired law enforcement, but I've hung out with police officers a long time, and they see such terrible things, and so they have to have a relief too somehow.
Yeah.
So they don't become numb, and they can still have that empathy for those families.
Right.
And so I guess we just kind of pick it from each other. But when I first started this, I was like all those other do-gooders out there, I call them. And that is, I just wanted to fix people. Oh my goodness, I wanted to make it better. And then, I don't know, probably the third or fourth crime scene I went to, I realized that I meet people on the worst day of their life, that their life's not going to get any worse than this. And it was already happened. I had nothing to do with what happened. But if I can make it a little less traumatic for them and let them know that they're not alone, whether it's a homicide or suicide, that they won't walk this journey by themselves, that's what gets me to go through to the next one.
You probably have that quote from Psalm 23 up in your office somewhere. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, thou art with me.
Yes.
And it's like this idea of, there is these journeys that people walk through. You cannot take it from them.
Right.
But you can walk through it with them.
Mm-hmm.
And while they go through it, you can be that one that comes alongside and offers I've heard described as the ministry of presence.
Mm-hmm.
You're just with them,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes having nothing to say, but all those ways in which you're also trying to mitigate the trauma and just see them go through it in a sense, but start to finish relatively from cleanup to trial and all that. Last question: we're coming into a holiday season.
Yes,
I imagine for many people who have that's this type of trauma in their life, it's particularly difficult. Do you find that you're getting follow-up with people, or
yes,
it's a little bit different type of, or intensifies your counseling time?
It does. We have 2 counselors now, and both of them pretty full-time. Because our counseling is different than say divorce counseling or something like that. I equate it to, it's like the old timey records where the needle got stuck and our families get stuck and they're reliving the trauma, and our counselors bump it so it can move on a little bit further. And so that's kind of the way our counseling is. And so during this time, we try to, we have events, we have a support group each month, and we try to get them to do new memories. Maybe we have one that's all they did. Her daddy was in charge of Thanksgiving, and that's such a hard time. So we taught to them, and now they do a new kind of Thanksgiving. They would, one that her daddy would probably just go, "Oh no, I don't want that," but intentionally do something he wouldn't do, and make new memories with the new, because she has children and now she's fixing to have grandchildren, and it's just another phase of her life. And so we're trying to teach them to start new memories, because life goes on and we want them to be productive with their families. But yes, it is a very challenging time, November through the 1st of January. I had one lady said, I go to bed. I want to go to bed the day before Thanksgiving and not wake up until January 2nd.
I understand that. And daylight savings time doesn't help because it's darker sometimes.
It doesn't.
So,
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.